So you've probably heard, short-term rentals in Kelowna are coming back. But here's what you might not realize. Just because the city's going to allow it doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. There's a double permission rule that excludes almost every condo in Kelowna. And if you don't understand this before you start looking, you could end up wasting a ton of time, or in the worst case, owning a $700,000 condo that you can't legally rent out short-term. I'm Mark with KelownaCondos.ca and Remax. Today, I'm walking you through exactly what buying a vacation home looks like, the buildings that allow the short-term rentals, what the income numbers look like in 2022, and what it's going to cost you to run one of these properties. If you want help finding a vacation home in Kelowna, reach out. I'd love to help. You'll find my booking link in the description below. Just read through the comments on the internet and you'll see that people think that every condo building in Kelowna allows short-term rentals. And that is why our vacancy rate is so low. But here's the reality. To run a short-term rental in Kelowna, you need two things. First, you're going to need to get a license from the city. The second thing, your strata corporation has to allow it in its bylaws. And you're going to need a strata council consent form. This is where I see the most confusion. Only about a dozen buildings in Kelowna permit short-term rentals under their strata bylaws. So just because the city now allows short-term rentals doesn't mean that every strata does. Most condo buildings in Kelowna, they didn't allow short-term rentals before the ban, and they probably won't after the ban is lifted. Can buildings change their rules? Maybe, but changing strata bylaws is going to require a 75% vote from the owners. In buildings where most owners are owner-occupiers or long-term landlords, getting that kind of approval is going to be nearly impossible. Most owners, they don't want the turnover, they don't want the noise, or they don't want the constant activity that comes with the short-term rental in their building. So realistically, you're still going to be working with a few buildings where this actually works. This is going to create a supply squeeze. And as buyers return to Kelowna, demand for these units is going to increase, especially with what's going on with the United States. People are choosing to stay in Canada for their holidays. So let's look at some of the buildings that allowed short-term rentals and what some of the downtown units were earning in 2022 before the ban. Brooklyn. Two-bedroom units here were generating around $44,000 annually in rental revenue. The average nightly rate, $211. The average occupancy rate, 57%, which means that you're going to be rented around 208 days a year. Brooklyn is a newer high-rise right in the heart of downtown. It appeals to buyers who want the walkability and they don't want to pay for all the extra amenities. Discovery Bay, it was one of the strongest performers. Two-bedroom units were averaging $65K a year. The average nightly rate, $262. Occupancy rate, 68% or 248 days a year. Discovery Bay, it sits right on the waterfront on Sunset Drive, and it's consistently popular with vacation renters because of the location and the amenities. Pools, hot tubs, gyms, beaches, this strata has it all. There are two Soul buildings on St. Paul, not the one on Costin. Two-bedroom units there generated around $48,000 a year. The average nightly rate, $223. Occupancy, 59% or about 215 days a year. Soul, it appeals to buyers who want a basic unit to keep the costs down. A few blocks away, you have St. Paul on St. Paul. Two-bedroom units were averaging around $48K a year. The average nightly rate was $224. Occupancy rate, though, was only 50%. Which is 183 days a year. The 50% occupancy rate is odd. I think that it might reflect owners taking it off for the winter and then renting it to students. There are a few other buildings that were very popular, but I don't have the revenue numbers for them. Playa del Sol is a full amenity building near Gyro Beach in the Lower Mission. This is extremely popular with families, and it's a true vacation getaway. Pinnacle Point, it's a full amenity building on the Quail Ridge Golf Course. It's popular with families and it's close to the airport and it's right next to UBCO. Caban and Aqua. Now, these two buildings, they were supposed to allow short-term rentals, but they got caught up in the provincial ban. It hasn't been confirmed whether short-term rentals will be permitted here, but my guess is that they will be. They're the newest of the short-term rental buildings, and given their location, they could be a fantastic option. Now let's talk about financing, because this is what 99% of buyers that I talk to don't believe. Banks don't treat short-term rental purchases the same way that they treat residential purchases. If you're buying a property with the intention of running it as a short-term rental, lenders often classify that as a business, even if you're using it for personal use. Prior to the short-term rental ban, many banks, they didn't finance units in short-term rental buildings. Owners often had to pay cash or take out a line of credit on their principal residence in order to complete the purchase. I had a client who actually worked at the bank. They said to him that they would give him an unsecured line of credit, but they wouldn't do a mortgage. He ended up going to a mortgage broker who got him a mortgage from a different bank. There are a few lenders and mortgage brokers who can get mortgages approved for the short-term rental buildings, and having someone who understands this is going to save you time and energy. Let's get into the costs. If you're managing the property yourself and you live in Kelowna, that's one thing. But most buyers that I talk to, they're looking for a vacation home. And they're coming from Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, even Ontario. They're buying this property for personal use, plus rental income when they're not here. Managing a short-term rental remotely, it can be done, but it's extremely difficult. You're going to need somebody on the ground to handle check-ins, cleaning, maintenance, restocking supplies, and also dealing with any issues that come up. I once talked to a property manager who managed a lot of short-term rentals here. He told me that they bought a laundromat just so that they could have somebody to do their bedding because finding somebody was impossible. Property management companies around here, they typically charge 30 to 50% of your gross rental income for the short-term rentals and 10 to 15% for the long-term rentals. Let's use Discovery Bay as an example. Annual revenue, $65,000. If your management fee is 40%, that's $26,000 going to the property manager. So now you're down to $39,000 before any other expenses. Even in the best performing buildings, you're probably not going to be rented 100% of the time. Discovery Bay, it had an average occupancy rate of 68%, which is pretty good. But that still means that 32% of the year, your unit is empty. And you're still paying strata fees, insurance, property taxes, all the other expenses. Every time a new guest checks in, you're going to be paying a cleaning fee, restocking toiletries, and also minor wear and tear. Cleaning fees alone, they can run you $100 to $150 per guest above the fee that you're going to charge them. So if you're renting 200 plus nights a year with an average stay of 3 to 4 nights, you're going to be looking at 50 to 70 turnovers, which is going to cost you about $5,000 to $10,000 in extra cleaning costs. Let me give you a realistic breakdown using Discovery Bay. Your gross rental income, $65,000. The management fee at 40%, you're minusing $26,000. Cleaning and turnover costs, you're minusing another $7,000. Strata fees at $600 a month, you're minusing $7,200. Your property taxes, minus another $3,000. Insurance, minus $2,000. Then you have the utilities and the internet, you're going to minus about another $2,500. Your net operating income before your mortgage is going to be $17,300. If you have a $400,000 mortgage at a 4% interest rate, your annual mortgage payment is going to be around $25,000. That's going to put you at a net loss at $8,000 a year. And that's before factoring in any major repairs, special levies, or personal use time. If you're using the property yourself for 4 to 6 weeks a year, that rental income is going to drop even more. First-time short-term rental buyers, they see the $65,000 gross revenue number and they think that they're going to make money. But the reality is, owning a vacation rental is often a break-even proposition at best, especially in the early years. The real value comes from having a personal vacation property that you can use when you want, and then having someone else cover the costs when you're not there. If you're buying purely as an investment and expecting cash flow, the numbers might not work the way you think they will. Here's the key takeaway. If a vacation rental is in your family's future, buying sooner rather than later is going to give you a huge advantage. Only a handful of buildings in Kelowna allow short-term rentals, and demand is going to increase as we get closer to the restrictions being lifted. Waiting a year or two, it could mean paying significantly more for the same property. But buying smart, it means understanding the real costs, the financing challenges, and the buildings that actually work. If you want someone to help you navigate the short-term rental market, let's talk. You can book a time with me using the link in the description below. If you're watching this on your TV, use the QR code at the top corner. We can talk about your situation, what's available, and what prices were like before the ban. This will help you decide if this makes sense for your family. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, drop a comment below. I'll see you in the next video.